And Elon Musk is not backing off his criticism of that budget legislation. You see here as he took to X to call on people to ask their lawmakers to vote against it. He's ended that post with, quote, "kill the bill." CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us with more on this. Good morning, Ed. You know, yesterday you said Republican lawmakers listened to Musk because of his sizable donations this last cycle. So how concerned is the president that Musk might succeed in killing this bill's chances?
Well, he's been uncharacteristically tight-lipped, Errol, about what Musk has been saying regarding the legislation, which seems to be an acknowledgement that he's saying it at all, because should the president somehow start to pick a fight with Musk, you run the risk of the Republican Party overall potentially losing a huge benefactor and somebody who can sway at least his followers on X and others who track his politics and his business deals for or against this legislation. Top Republicans insist there are no plans to scrap the current legislation. The Senate is working on it anyway. They're likely going to make some modifications to get it passed with the 53 votes they have in the Senate before they send it back to the House for final consideration. The goal is to get it done by July 4th, so they're working pretty quickly to get through this. The president notably had meetings yesterday here at the White House with members of the Senate Finance Committee, which is the panel set to take on some of the trickiest parts of this legislation regarding taxes, spending, Medicaid reform, things like that. But they all came out of the meeting pretty hopeful that they're going to continue to move ahead despite Musk's criticisms.
And there's this other headline we're following, Ed, with President Trump ordering an investigation into former President Joe Biden. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so the president is essentially asking his special counsel, or the White House counsel, and the attorney general to investigate whether or not the former president was of sound mind when he was in office. A memo directs the White House counsel and the attorney general to look into whether there was an attempt to, quote, deceive the public by hiding what the president alleges was serious cognitive decline. The investigation is set to include looking into whether the former president used the auto pen to sign key documents. Remember, the auto pen is that machine that's programmed with the president's signature. It is used sometimes to sign form letters and other things. The current president alleges the former president relied on it too much. But even this White House acknowledges that they use the auto pen every so often to put the president's signature on things. In response, we should point out, former President Biden says, in part, quote, "Let me be clear. I made the decisions during my presidency. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false." This, of course, has been the subject of reporting in recent books, and there are some others coming this summer regarding the former president, how he operated in the closing months of his presidency. But there have also been some unfounded conspiracy theories floating among the president and his supporters regarding the current president and his supporters regarding the former president and his mental condition when he was in office. So, Errol, President Trump not letting President Biden fade into obscurity that quietly.
Now back into the spotlight. All right, Ed O'Keefe, Thank you very much.
Take care.